welcome to the first peer support podcast. Today's podcast is all about resilience and is presented to you by Rachel, that's me, and Andrea, who are peer support workers within the Wellbeing Service. Today's podcast will cover what are peer support workers, what is resilience, the ups and downs of being resilient, examples of resilience from a peer support work team during the current COVID-19 pandemic. We hope that you come away from today's podcast with an understanding of what resilience is, its ups and downs, and how peer support workers use resilience within our own recovery journeys. So you've heard from me, my name's Rachel, so I'm going to introduce you to my co-presenter today, Andrea.
Hello, I'm Andrea and I've been a peer support worker with the Wellbeing Service for around about 4 years now.
Okay, and like I say, my name's Rachel and I've been a peer support worker for about 3 years now, Andrea. Time has flown, so you'll be hearing from us today. So you know that we're peer support workers, but Andrea, what exactly is peer support?
Okay, so peer support is using lived experience, in this case of mental health challenges, to support others that are going through a similar experience. So we use our stories of mental health recovery to support others and give the idea of hope.
Mm-hmm. And I think for me, it's also sort of knowing that other people have gone through something similar. They might not have gone through the same thing, but they've walked that journey before you, and you know we give sort of, like say, the idea of hope and that recovery is possible.
Yeah, and just that idea of knowing that other people out there feel the way you do or have felt that way in the past. Somehow for me, I didn't feel so lonely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's that somebody has had that experience, a similar experience to you, and they can share that to support you on your own journey. So that's peer support in a brief little nutshell. So today's podcast, Andrea, is about resilience. And what exactly is that? What is this thing called resilience?
Okay, well, I have got a dictionary definition for you. So taken from the Cambridge Dictionary, it says that resilience is the ability to be happy and successful, etc., again after something difficult or bad has happened.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because it doesn't say that you're going to be, does it? It's not like a guarantee as such, but it's the ability to, isn't it? And I think that's the key thing there for me, because I think, you know, when we've all gone through difficult things, it's knowing that actually this too will pass. I think that's kind of, for me, that's a good sort of good sort of way to sum it up, in that this will pass and you'll come out through the other side, you know, probably a different person, but probably with a lot of growth and a lot of change, and that's really good as well. But also that ability to be able to be happy and successful again. What do you think, Andrea?
Yeah, so the ability to build a new life, if you like, so to be able to overcome what you've gone through, come out the other side happy, as it says, smiling, and actually like living a meaningful life, I guess.
Yeah, you know, and we kind of develop that resilience over time, don't we? I think it's something that perhaps, you know, particularly using my own experience, there'll be times when people have said to me, you are so resilient, you know, your resilience is really quite strong. And I might agree with them, but there may well also be times when my resilience isn't. So it's kind of quite a fluid thing, I guess. So that leads me on, Andrea, to thinking then, well, what does resilience mean for us, you know, for you and I mean, what does it mean for you, Andrea?
Okay, well, for me, it's having the ability to keep going. So whatever life decides to throw at me and whatever changes come my way, for me, it's like, how am I going to cope with this? What am I going to change? How am I going to adapt so that I can keep moving forward, get through each day, and come out the other side. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I do agree with you there. It's kind of, I don't know, whatever life throws at me, I know that I do have those reserves within me to deal with it. And, you know, sometimes that's going to be quite difficult, and I'll really have to dig deep into my resilience to do that. And there'll be other times where it's kind of easier. But yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? The ability to pick yourself up, dust yourself off,
Yep.
learn from the experience, whether that's a negative experience or a positive one, and move forward. And I think it kind of links an awful lot to recovery as well, isn't it? Kind of, you know, using that resilience to keep putting one foot in front of the other, even if that's a tiny, teeny step, but taking those steps forward in our recovery to carry on and continue with, you know, the joys that life throws at us, whether that's something that's good or something that's not so good. And I know we both kind of, when we were looking at writing this podcast, we both looked at sort of definitions of resilience. We also looked at some quotes, didn't we? I mean, have you got like a good one that you'd like to share with everyone today?
I have, yeah. I mean, I found one that really resonated with me. It's a quote by Elizabeth Edwards, who's an American attorney and a best-selling author and healthcare activist. And she said that resilience is accepting your new reality, even if it's less good than the one you had before. You can fight it, you can do nothing but scream about what you've lost, or you can accept that and try to put together something that's good. And the reason I gravitated towards this one is that's exactly what's happened to me in life. You know, I've had times where I've tried to fight against change. I've also had the times where I've done nothing and had a good rant and rave to my friends and family. But actually, I come to realise that I just had to accept that what was going on was happening and try and do my best to put a plan in place to deal with it. And then accept that what happened afterwards was my new reality. So yeah, that's a good definition of resilience for me.
Yeah, and I think what hits me there is, you know, it's kind of saying resilience is accepting your new reality, even if it's less good than the one that you had before. And I think when we've gone through things in life, you know, when we emerge the other side, it is, isn't it? It's like you said, we can either have this reality where we go, well, like that's not what I want. And we can fight against it and put a lot of effort into that, which is draining, or we can actually say, okay, this is what we've got. I need to move forward with this so I can improve on it. If it's less good than, you know, what I've had before, I can learn from it. And again, going back to that whole, let's just put one foot in front of the other, no matter how teeny tiny that step is, and just kind of keep going. So thank you for that, Andrea.
Okay, Rachel. What about your one? What did you pick?
Well, I found one from Mary Ann Radmacher, I think that's how I say her name, who is a writer and an artist. And hers was saying, courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. And I know it doesn't use the word resilience in that, but for me, it's that last bit. I will try again tomorrow. You know, no matter what today has thrown at me, whether today has been a good day, a bad day, fair to middling day, or a day where I didn't get out of bed because I just couldn't face the day. It's that, you know, and it's just like, it's that little voice at the end of the day going, okay, it was like this, but I will try again tomorrow. That kind of, that, the ability to have a blank sheet for each day. You know, I will start this again today. I won't keep this in my head as, you know, something that's awful, or I won't kind of stick with that. But what I will do is actually go, okay, that was today, try again tomorrow. I will keep going. And I think for me, that's a really good sort of idea of what resilience kind of means to me.
Yeah, and when you were reading that out, Rachel, that made me think about a time where it had got to the end of the day, and before I went to sleep, I had a little cry whilst I was thinking, okay, Andrea, fresh day tomorrow. And actually, for me, part of being resilient was having the ability to like express my emotions and have the cry and get it out and then start again, and realizing that it wasn't weak to do that. That was actually a strength.
Yeah, and I think that's it, isn't it? It's having that sort of strength to assess all the things that have happened that day, put them to one side. I'll start again tomorrow, and we'll see what occurs. I also found another really good quote from Nelson Mandela, which was, "Do not judge me by my successes. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again." And it's like what you've just said about going to bed and having that cry, knowing that it's not weak to do that. It's actually a real strong strength to do that. And you might have, if you were crying, you might have fallen down that day for whatever reason, whatever setbacks or little kind of speed bumps sort of came your way on that day. You fell down, you had that cry, you assessed it, but you picked yourself up, you got up again, and you started that again. And I think for me, that is what resilience is. It's the ability to keep to fall, to look after yourself in that fall, pick yourself up and keep carrying on, even if like I kept saying, actually, even if it's the smallest of footsteps, or even if that day actually your steps are standing still, but just being in being in that moment. So 3 very different and 3 very interesting quotes there, Andrea, which kind of do sum up resilience in a nutshell, I think. But I think there's also lots of different ways we can think about resilience. I know when we spoke to the rest of the peer support worker team, we would have got very different ideas of what resilience is, what it means to each person. So what we've got next is we collated the ideas of the peer support worker team, and we've put them together in an acrostic. So I know this is hard in a podcast to say, but if you imagine you've got the word resilience going down the side, and we are going to take each of those letters of the word resilience and give you a little bit of a definition of them. Should I start, Andrea?
You read the first one, Rachel.
Okay, so R is rest often.
E, everyone is individual.
S, sleep.
I, invest in yourself.
L, listen.
I, it's another day forward.
E, engage in new things.
N, not okay is okay.
C, carry on being you.
And E, encourage others.
So we've spelt out the word resilience there. And I think if I just took one of those sections, I think for me, the one that resonates the most is I. So the second I, it's another day forward. And doesn't that just link into those quotes that we've just spoken about? The ability to, it's another day tomorrow, to fall down, to be able to pick yourself up again. So for me, that really sort of hits me in terms of, it's another day forward. It might have been, on the scale of things, a difficult day, a rubbish day. However, it's another day forward. It's another day in your recovery journey. Is there one of those bits there, Andrea, that sort of sticks with you?
Yeah, so for me, it's the C, Rachel, carry on being you. Because I know when I've had tough times, quite often I'll measure myself against other people. And if I've got a friend that I consider is a really strong person, quite often I'll think about how they're doing or how they would have coped in a situation, and maybe compare myself and think that I'm not quite as good. But actually, it's that realization that whatever I'm doing is working for me. And like the E says, everyone's individual. And actually, if I just carry on being me, then that's enough. And if, like you said before, take it in small steps, I'll get there in the end. So believing in myself and being me.
Yeah, and it's that kindness, isn't it? It's not kind of going, oh well, they can cope with this. They must be really, really resilient. They can cope with whatever life throws at them. Well, they might be on the surface, but underneath they might be, pedaling like mad. But it is, isn't it? It's that individual actually, this is how I'm seeing things. This is how I'm dealing with it. This is what my resilience levels are like. And that's actually okay. So we've got the peer support workers to help us with that. And I think, what we've just said is that, being resilient is an ongoing process, isn't it? And it may have its ups and downs. So I know with my own resilience, there are days where I'm just going along going, yeah, things are all right, things are tootling along nicely, all good, that's fine. There may be days where I've got my head in my hands because something's come along, or, Andrew, when you have those days where something happens, then something else happens, and then something else happens, and then someone might send you an innocent little email, and then you're just like, oh, no. I really can't. It's not just me, is it, Andrea?
No,
days like that.
It's one of those days where you wish you'd either not got out of bed, or you just can't wait for the day to end so you can go to bed and start again. When everything seems to go wrong, nothing goes right. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, and on those days, again, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't feel very resilient at all. I wouldn't feel able to cope with things, and it'd be like, oh, I just, like I say, just want to go back to those old behaviours of curling up on a ball and wishing the world away. But that's just because it's an up and a down, and there may well be days where something happens that the previous day I would not have coped with very well, or I'd have just reacted to, or I'd have got very stressed about, that I handle really well, and I handle with a smile and a laugh. So I think it's, resilience is something that builds, isn't it? It kind of carries along with time, but also we have to keep developing. We have to keep sort of doing things to support, because life will throw things at us like COVID-19, lockdown, pandemic, where actually, our ups and downs are quite roller coastery, if that's even a word.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is a word, and it really puts a lovely image in my mind of the up and down. So yeah, like you said, levels of resilience, they can change over time. And actually something that's happened quite recently for all of us is the change in our daily lives because of COVID-19, and every one of us has had to be resilient and develop our resilience. Yeah,
and I think, what we now 12 weeks into this pandemic, lockdown is lifting, it's easing, isn't it? I think there are certain things that are a bit confusing about all of these things as well. But, I know at the beginning, I was like, well, I work from home anyway. My anxiety likes not going out and seeing people, so that's all right. And probably feeling, quite resilient. But I also know people I've spoken to at the beginning of lockdown had very little resilience, had very little feeling that they could cope, because the things that they would usually use to support their mental health were very quickly removed. Like, if you like to go to the gym to let off some steam, or you would go for regular walks, not just one a day, would have found their resilience would have been quite low, but actually has been building, as we get used to it. And I think, I'm probably at the stage in lockdown that my resilience is okay. It's pretty good, but I might be sort of getting, I don't know, a bit bored, a bit kind of, it's a bit samey, and that's when I need to look at those things that I need to put in place to support myself. But yeah, it is, isn't it? And I think it may also, like you said, like that roller coaster of, well, actually one day you might be feeling really resilient in this, another day you're not. But if we go back to that peer support worker definition of resilience, not okay is okay.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's okay to find that day difficult. It's okay, if you've got kids at home, or if your partner's at home because you're both furloughed and you're spending far more time with each other. It's okay actually to have those days where you're like, goodness me, I just need some space, I need some time to myself. So what we have done is also asked the peer support worker team, how they're being resilient within the pandemic. And we had a variety of sort of different responses, didn't we? Because we've got a variety of different experiences within the team. So people who have sort of children were finding that with the children being at home all day, because you're just not used to it, are you? You know, they go off to school, they come back, you have the weekends, you have holidays. So they were finding that actually not fighting against that new reality. So like the quote you said right at the beginning, Andrea, so not fighting against that reality of your kids are at home all day. So what they did was relax things, relax routines, and not sweating the small stuff. And I think that's good, isn't it? It's kind of going, well, this is what we're dealing with now. This is our reality. So let's just make that as easy for us as it can be whilst still working from home and home educating.
Yeah.
We've also sort of had people sharing that feeling overwhelmed by working and working from home, because there isn't that distinction, is there, between, oh look, it's knocking off time, brilliant, see you later guys, get in the car, get home. There's kind of the temptation to carry on working, keep carrying on working. I'll just answer this email, I'll just do that. So people sort of saying to us that actually being very strict about when home and work begins and ends. And again, it goes back to that new reality, doesn't it? In terms of, I've got to work from home. In order to stay well, I need to have that cut-off point. So I'm going to be very firm about doing that. And this goes into that as well, sort of developing a new routine to the day, because if you carried on with the old one, you can't use it. It's no longer viable. So let's have a new routine and let's keep to that routine. So some interesting ones there. Did you sort of have any?
Yeah, so I've got a few examples as well. So with being at home so much, some of the peer support workers said that they needed to make sure that their day contained some enjoyable things as well, and actually slowing down to take the time to appreciate them. So if someone was working from home, making sure that they take regular breaks, maybe go for a walk in the garden or split the day up by watching a little bit of telly or something. So making some fun parts to the day. Also trying to have a strengths focus when dealing with the challenges that the pandemic has brought. So, you know, looking at the things we can do rather than the things that we can't. So I know I was, before this happened, I was somebody who heavily relied on routine. So it used to be that I got up early and I got the bus to work and I was in work early preparing. But, you know, I couldn't do that. So what I could do was still get up reasonably early and go for a walk. So replacing some of the things that I'd lost. So yeah, this is what I can do, or I can't do the other stuff, you know, but how can I substitute it in a way?
And I think that can be hard at the start, whether that's, you know, changes have come in place because of pandemic or because of life changes that are out of our control, because all of this was out of our control, wasn't it, Andrea? And I think, you know, we can, it's easy to then go, well, I can't do this and I can't do that. And Boris has said, I can't, oh, this is terrible. I can't see the wood for the trees. Whereas stepping back and seeing that strengths focus, like you say, you know, well, my routine was like get up early, catch the bus, and I'll be into work early and it'd be great. And you've kind of stepped back from that and you've seen, well, I can't catch the bus, but I can still get up early and I could, you know, start work early, but actually it'd be quite nice to do something sort of nice in between there. And reminding ourselves, and I think we have to constantly do this, and reminding ourselves of those strength focuses, you know, so like we talked about having bad days, didn't we? What in that bad day could you do? It might just be you opened your eyes and you were awake. But that's a strength. That's something that you've done there. You know, all right, you've been in your pajamas all day. Okay, but you got out of bed. You know, you might have gone from one room to another, but you did that. You've got up. You might, all right, you sat and watched telly all day, but you occupied your time. So it's looking, you know, and sometimes that can be so hard to find the strength focus if we're just looking at all the things that have been taken away from us. But I think that's also how we develop our resilience, isn't it? It's looking at, in the worst of days, what have you achieved? Stick to that and tomorrow's another day, and what can you build on, or what can you continue to do? So yeah, lots of different experiences there, isn't there, and lots of different ways to be resilient. And I think the thread of all of those examples is how using self-care helps to develop our resilience. So people with routines, people who've relaxed things, making sure each day contains something enjoyable, having a strengths focus. We could keep giving examples
Exactly.
for ages, till the cows come home. But the thread of it is that those are all self-care, and self-care helps to develop our resilience. And self-care is going to be the focus of the next peer support worker podcast. So I look forward to sort of delving more into that. But yeah, lots of different things there. So I guess really the next question is to ask you guys listening today to have a think about what might resilience look like for you. So, we've talked about, haven't we, Andrea, how resilience can change over time, can change within a day, really, So you might want to have a think about, actually, what does that look like for you? So is it that resilience for you is, I'm just getting out of bed every day, and that's what I'm doing, and that's how I'm moving forward? Or if you're further on in your recovery journey, looking back and going, oh yeah, goodness me, right at the start, I couldn't cope with things. Oh, I found them so difficult. There's one point in my recovery journey, I couldn't decide what socks to wear. But, that's another story that we'll save for another podcast. But looking back, you can see how my resilience has grown over time, and how it's had peaks and troughs. Like we've gone back to that roller coaster example. I mean, would you say that's the same for you, Andrea?
Yeah, I'd also say maybe have a look back and see how you've managed to cope with situations. What have you done differently? How have you adapted? Have you had to ask for help when you normally wouldn't? Have you offered someone else some help? Is that what has been the thing that's got you through? Have you done things with other people when you'd normally do them on your own? Did you have to change your diet? It might be some really subtle changes, but they're all parts of being resilient, and they make up the bigger picture.
Yeah, so, thinking about that might be useful, mightn't it?
Yeah, and I think a really important thing to remember is it's okay not to feel okay. Like we said before, you don't have to have a day where you're on top of the world. Maybe you're just having a day you feel quite low, and you really don't want to go anywhere or do anything, but that's okay as well. We don't have to be bouncing off the walls and going out and meeting people or walking 5 miles a day.
Yeah, no, it's okay to be feeling the way that you are feeling. So we're kind of coming to the end of our very first peer support podcast. So thank you so much for listening. Just sort of bringing it all together. So today's podcast has looked at resilience, both in terms of definitions and what people have said about it, but also what that means to us as individuals, and sort of asking, people listening today to have a think about that themselves. We've also looked at the peer support worker lived experience examples of developing resilience, particularly during the current COVID-19 pandemic. So I'd just like to end today's podcast really on one final quote, and it comes from Steve Maroboli, who is a speaker, best-selling author and behavioural science academic. And he said that life doesn't get any easier or more forgiving. We get stronger and more resilient. And I don't know about you, Andrea. I mean, there's a part of me that thinks this doesn't even need to be discussed. It's like, yeah, we can't change really those things that are out of our control, those things that come along. But actually, if we get stronger and more resilient, then actually we deal with them in a much different way, don't we?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just before we end, just a few words really, what to do if you're feeling unsafe at the moment. So one of the things you could do is you could call your GP and explain that you're feeling like you can't keep yourself safe, and you could make an urgent appointment with them. You can also talk to the Samaritans. You can contact them on 116 123. and they're available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Or you can also email them at joe@samaritans.org. And also, if you prefer to text, there is a text service called Shout. You can text to 85258, and they're available 24/7 for help in a crisis. But that information will also be on the podcast notes. And if you're wondering where to go and how to seek help, the information for that is also on the podcast notes on the Wellbeing Service website.
And if you're listening to this today and you're thinking that perhaps referring yourself to the Wellbeing Service would be something you'd need to do, you can self-refer to the Wellbeing Service, and you can do so via our website, so where you found this podcast, or over the telephone. You don't need to have a referral from your GP, you can do it yourself. And if you are currently having treatment within the Wellbeing Service and you're thinking that peer support would actually be quite useful for you, then please do speak to your therapist who can make the referral for you. So we've come to the end of our very first peer support podcast. Thank you for being in our first one. I hope you've enjoyed it. And we hope that you're able to join us again for our next podcast, which will be on the subject of self-care and self-compassion. So I'll say goodbye from me. Goodbye, and you'll say goodbye as well.
I'll say goodbye, and thank you very much for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed it.
Thank you.